This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 92 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm so glad you joined me for the podcast. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. If you're returning, glad you're back as always. And I hope, as always, that you're finding the information in this podcast helpful. You know, it's amazing to me. When I check the statistics on the podcast, I've reached another milestone, and that we've had over 40,000 downloads of the podcast so far, and that is just unbelievable. I'm just blown away by the amount of support I'm receiving from people and just the feedback I'm getting, and so glad you're here with me and joining me in this journey. Today's guest is a pretty special guy. His name is David Sturgess, and David was one of the members of my most recent Mastermind group. And if you're not familiar with Mastermind groups, I've mentioned that in several previous episodes. But a Mastermind group is just simply a way to do some group coaching and group mentoring. And the idea really came from out of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich is the name of the book. But anyway, he coined the term mastermind, which just the idea behind it is when you get a group of like-minded people together that are experts in different ways, they form what is called a mastermind. And so one of the things that I'm finding that people are just really hungry for in our particular space is just have a way to have a community that's something a little more than just social media and that sort of thing. And so the mastermind groups that I have, we usually limit it to about 6 to 8 people, but it's a way for people to get together and talk about their practices, talk about their struggles, and it's a safe place to talk about whatever you want to talk about. There's no shame or anything in comparing notes with each other. And plus, we get the benefit of learning from each other. And also, it's a way for me to coach people and mentor people that are in this process of starting or building private practices or growing private practices. So if you're interested in joining my next one, I hope to have it started in September. I haven't quite picked a date yet because I was waiting to see who might be interested in it. The plan is for this next cohort or next mastermind is for us to meet twice a month instead of just once a month as I did in the previous one. Well, as you go along and you try new things, you kind of learn things as you go. But what I've done is just done them once a month and asked for a 6-month commitment. But I think what I'm going to do this time is just do it for 3 months or maybe 4 once we get the group together, and do it twice a month. And so we'll get together 2 times a month. We meet for an hour using the Zoom video link, and that way we're able to record our sessions, and then I repost that on the private Facebook group I have for the mastermind people that have been taking place in the mastermind group. And one of the things about it that I also do that's just kind of a perk is that with the mastermind group, I also make available some of my resources at either discounted prices or just give them away. So some of the courses that I have and that sort of thing, when you join the mastermind group, you get access to those different things. So just wanted to make you aware of that as well. But anyway, if you're interested in joining the next mastermind group or the next group cohort, if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/mastermind, and that'll get you to the page where you can fill out the application to apply. And I'll say this, not every, this may or may not be a good fit for you, but what we'll do is once you apply, I'll look at your application, and then we might have a short phone conversation just to see if it's going to be a good fit for you. The cost of it is hopefully, I've tried to price it at something that's reasonable for people, but it's just $78 per month. And like I said, it's going to be a 3 to 4 month commitment with that. I think we'll probably do 4 months. That'll give us a little more time. That'll be a total of 8 sessions, which is a good number of sessions to have, and just being able to do the mastermind group. So anyway, I want you to check that out. Again, it's practiceoftherapy.com/mastermind. And we're going to tentatively, can't say that word, try to start in September. So it's a good start to the fall. And so, anyway, go check it out. Today, as I mentioned, I've got my friend David Sturgess, and he was a member of the last mastermind group I did. And David has just grown just incredibly in the time that he started the mastermind group. He was in that unique position of really making the transition for working in a hospital setting to starting his own private practice. So I want you to hear from David, and he's got a lot to share. So without further ado, here's my friend David Sturgess. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy today to have a friend of mine, David Sturgess. And David and I met, he was part of one of my mastermind groups. And so I've gotten to know David, and he's just got an incredible journey. And I invited him to come on the podcast to share that journey and what he has learned so far just about making that transition from being employed by a hospital and then going into private practice, because I've seen him just grow incredibly through this journey. So welcome, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you. So as I start with most folks, David, tell folks about your journey and how you've landed where you've landed and just your thoughts about it.
Well, I guess for about the last decade, I have worked in 2 different treatment facilities in Georgia. And I found that it was not giving me that flexibility that I wanted for my family. We wanted to also have greater earning potential than what, a nonprofit treatment facility typically can deliver. Mm-hmm. And so I've had clinicians out in the community that I was friends with in terms of referring people out of the hospital into, their outpatient work, and connected with one of those ladies and just started to do private practice one night a week, on the side, just to kind of learn the ropes. And over about a year and a half, realized I want to make that transition. But I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So started poking around in the podcast world and came across some of your stuff and was listening. And when you announced your mastermind group, was able to start getting that information that I knew I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And started to create more of that foundation, from a private practice standpoint that I could build off of. Mm-hmm. And then here last spring, made that transition and left the hospital full time, and have been building over here the last 3 or 4 months for this thing to be full time.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your thought process around just making that, as we like to say, just pulling the trigger? That's probably not a great metaphor to use. But just making that leap, I guess, is a better way of saying it, is just, what was your thought process and your decision? How did you come to the decision?
Really started with my 8-year-old asking me to come have lunch with her. And due to paid time off leave at the hospital, not being able to have that flexibility to reschedule a client, things of that nature. I noticed myself becoming more and more unhappy with the way my lifestyle was. I loved the agency that I was working for. The people were great. I could handle the intensity of a residential client. Those are folks that are self-injurious, suicidal, battling some sort of psychosis. It's a really intense population. I was also noticing getting burned out on that population because it was so intense. There's a difference, I think, between, I can do that and I need to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be able to go on a field trip or go to lunch. And we also had some family things shifting from family health, family member having some health issues and needing some flexibility to support there. The cool thing that I've learned with private practice is I can create the lifestyle I want.
Right.
And that's what I'm learning, how to tweak my niche population, I guess is how we say that word,
right.
That buzzword. And developing that I think is something that you have helped me, create is bringing it from that broad term of, I work with all these types of people for the last decade in hospitals, but you really being able to help me focus in on crafting that for myself and then building my lifestyle, my days off, to be able to go have lunch with my child.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that's a big motivator for a lot of us that have gone into private practice, just being able to, so being able to just spend time with your family, being able to take off when you need to take off and not worry about, essentially being your own boss in that sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what were some of the biggest challenges you kind of encountered as you made that transition? What were, I guess, maybe the things that you felt like you needed the most help with?
Understanding the financial leap was one. You and I spent probably a couple of mastermind sessions talking about that,
right.
Handling your personal finances as well as setting up business finances.
Right.
Minimizing the debt risk to your home, and not in terms of your mortgage necessarily, but if it's student loan debt and a car payment and credit card debt and all of those things, those are monthly payments that don't necessarily have to exist. Mm-hmm. And to take your income from a somewhat guaranteed right. paycheck, whatever that means, to a variable a variable income where right. 1 month could be great and 1 month not. Mm-hmm. You still have that payment that you got to make. And so trying to get rid of as much debt as possible on my personal home side. And then from a foundation of a business, you're running a business. And I've recognized there are a lot of great therapists out there, but they don't know how to run a business. And so their private practices fail. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that to be my situation. Right. There's also a lot of great business owners, but they're not great therapists. Yeah. And so, there's both sides to that. And I wanted to try to figure out, and obviously I'm still figuring this out. I don't think we ever completely do it. But where is that kind of middle path to being a great therapist, and you got to manage this business, and you got to manage the finances, and you got to charge certain rates, and you got to make those types of decisions in order to be open for your clients.
Right. Right.
And a lot of that came out of your Money Matters course and listening to the podcast and different folks you were interviewing. Mm-hmm. So that gave me the confidence to go, okay, financially, this is where we are. And being that I did the private practice on the side for a while,
Right.
I had already generated some revenue.
Yeah.
And I think that's good when you have the ability to kind of burn the candle at both ends, so to speak, for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
From a business standpoint, you can kind of work some of these kinks out over a period of months doing it part-time,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to cold turkey quitting your full-time job
Right.
and trying to build with no guaranteed income.
Yeah. Well, I know that was, I remember us having those conversations and just the importance of building a reserve for yourself, of making sure that you've got the financial buffer in place to be able to kind of withstand the slow, those slow periods at the beginning as you're building your caseloads, as you're building your clientele. And tell folks how you started part-time. How did that work in terms of being able to juggle that and being able to do that in the context of working for a hospital or an agency?
That was a little bit of a dance in the realm of making sure I was still in good standing with the hospital. I was not prepared to be full-time private practice financially. It was, I'm doing this on the side to help pay down student loan debt. Recognize that the hospital can't give me the raise that I need to be able to do that. So having those direct conversations with, my leadership at the hospital and kind of getting their blessing, so to speak, that took a lot of pressure off in terms of, okay, I'm not hiding this, from the hospital standpoint. And then it was just a matter of, okay, well, the person I was subleasing from, she had been hounding me for a very long time of, you need to do private practice, you need to do private practice. So at that point, it was, working with her to figure out the logistics in her office, what night is going to be best. And then having the conversation with my wife of, okay, we got 2 kids and soccer and softball and everything else. If I'm out of the loop for a night, a week, how much does that, where's the return on me being gone for a night help us financially?
Right. Yeah.
So as the first night filled up, then it was moving to, okay, hey honey, can I do this 2 nights a week?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you have to really kind of weigh in those beginning stages. I think you were smart, and I really advise people to, if they're working a full-time job, and they're depending on that income from that full-time job, I say don't quit your day job too quickly. It's just getting that, being prepared financially to make the transition. And that's basically how I did mine as well. I was working for an agency and started seeing clients in the evenings and on weekends. And then what I did as well is I just took all of that money that I was making from the private practice and just basically started kind of stockpiling it to create that reserve. And really had benchmarked for myself is, once I've got at least 2 months of salary and expenses for running the practice together, that's when I started making that transition. And so, the other option that I think, again, that's out there for people is doing your private practice, but then having another kind of unrelated job. It's kind of an out of the box kind of way of thinking about it. And I did that for a while. I know one of the things David and I have in common is we're both in ministry and, do a lot of church related things. I was the coordinator for an organization called Episcopal Appalachian Ministry. So I had that it was a part-time job, and it had a lot of flexibility with the hours and that sort of thing. And so being able to find something like that just gives you a lot of leeway is a good thing. So
yeah, I often joke now, that the kind of summer slump that some therapists have with vacations and, people are out of town and not really coming to therapy every week, especially when your main itch is family and adolescents. I probably picked the worst month in the world to quit my job and go into private practice because I went straight into that summer slump.
Right.
And, having that kind of financial buffer in that savings account following that profit first model, I didn't have to so much worry about expenses, and I had those few clients that would still be coming over the summer. That's also given me the time to build kind of that foundation from the administrative side, making sure my forms are what they needed to be and making sure they're loaded into my EHR and, does the website have a portal and, all of those types of things. Because websites are always going to break, the widgets are always going to break. What is that foundation there that when school does start, and the referrals are now coming in, it's all there and it's ready to roll.
Right.
So
yeah, and that whole concept of why you're in those beginning stages when you've got a lot more time to do those things, investing in your time to bootstrap and put those things together. I know one of the things that you were really working on was making sure that your website was up and functional and that sort of thing. And how's that going? Is that working well for you?
It broke yesterday. And the boot, and I've heard this a million times on different podcasts, but I stubbornly was like, no, I'll do it. The website is kind of a thorn in my side. Yeah. And I think starting off, folks really struggle with, I can't afford to pay anybody. And so I have to bootstrap it. There are pros and cons to it, obviously. And you will find yourself in a situation where, no, you just can't financially afford it. And at the same time, the amount of time that I have wasted on trying to do it myself and it not working probably would have been better off months ago to go ahead and cough up the money to get it done.
Yeah.
And
so pay me now or pay me later.
Right. Yes. It definitely is that.
Yeah.
And when you outsource things that are just sucking your time, that's time that you can turn into seeing a client and bringing in revenue, or writing for the blog, or doing a Facebook Live or YouTube video, or going and making that referral connection. I wasted so many hours doing a website that somebody else could have been doing, and I would have been out doing the relational thing that I enjoy better.
Right.
So having some of those realizations months ago, would have probably saved me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are, I can remember the same thing. And I know this last, I think I might have shared with folks that the Practice of Therapy website book. And I knew that I could spend hours trying to figure out why it was broken, but I did outsource that. I'm so glad I did. And it was well worth the money I spent to do that, to get it fixed. And not have to worry about it. And they fixed it better than I could have anyway, because they found stuff that I wasn't aware of and that sort of thing. And so I know just enough about, I enjoy doing all that tech stuff, but I know just about enough of it to make me dangerous with all of that. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And I've kind of, I've put money into the WordPress course and, things like that. And I do see it as I need the knowledge, to be able to tweak things on my own in a pinch or something like that. And outsourcing that and then turning that into outsourcing social media marketing, is proving to be more profitable, from a return on investment standpoint. Because it's very, very time consuming and I just don't have that knowledge.
Right.
When somebody else does. And one thing that I've appreciated so much about the podcasts and mastermind groups and things like that is not having to feel like I have to invent all of this on my own.
Yeah.
The idea that we're all in this together, we're not competitors. It's already been done.
Yeah.
Follow what works,
Right.
If it's a proven system that works, an outsourcing website is proven to work.
Yeah.
Do that first, and then you can circle back and learn the nuts and bolts when you got more time and things like that.
Right. Well, I know one of the other things that you're doing, which you're doing pretty, I guess, in thinking about what is typically done, but you had kind of a great opportunity to collaborate with someone, and you've actually have brought on another therapist with your practice. How did that transpire, and what's that process been like?
So she and I worked together at one of the hospitals, and she holds one. There are 4 people in the state of Georgia that has this certification, and she is one of those 4. She was looking to earn money. I was looking to, expand what Foundry Counseling could offer. And she watched me do the one night a week, type of thing as a colleague at the hospital. And so, it was somebody I could trust. It was somebody I knew that I could work with. She brought something to the table that was in addition to what I wanted to do. So it was a different kind of niche market, so to speak.
She's doing DBT. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And so she and I can facilitate skills groups for that, and it truly be adherent DBT and not, just the run of the mill. I went to the 2-day DBT conference, and so now I'm doing DBT. There is an intensively level trained and certification process within DBT that a lot of clinicians are not familiar with. And a psychiatrist says you need DBT. Somebody goes to Psychology Today, or they start Googling, and somebody's put DBT on their Psychology Today profile, but they might not understand the adherent side of that, just the same way as somebody trying to do EMDR, and not truly understanding everything that's involved and when not to do it and things of that nature. So she and I already having that same knowledge, and experience in the hospital setting using DBT, it was a good fit, and again, having the opportunity to do a skills group, groups are a great way to increase revenue. You got multiple people in that room, paying a price for them as an individual for participating in the group. And so I'm not losing the hour just because we're both in there, but because by the time you kind of split that, you're both making, pretty much your hour, but you're also serving more people at once, and those can break off into other individual sessions or other family sessions. So it's a revenue builder. It's a marketing tool that I think really will help Foundry from a serving the community standpoint. Really have a big impact.
Right. And it's a very unique niche. And I know just from knowing you, David, and just that your involvement in our mastermind group was just you're a private pay is the model you're using. But one thing I'll say about that is if you ever did decide to do insurance, having something like that gives you a little more negotiation power with the insurance companies in terms of asking for a higher rate, because it is so very specialized in what you're doing. And the fact that you don't have many, if any, other people in the state or your area that are certified in that. So that was just one thought I had about that. So yeah, well, good. So I want to be mindful of your time, David, and I'm so glad you were able to come and talk on the podcast just about all that you're doing. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you, or about your website, and about your practice.
Well, we got a Facebook page, Foundry Counseling, and then foundrycounseling.com are the website and Facebook outlets. That's the fastest way. Phone number is on the website as well if anybody needed to call. And we are in Marietta, Georgia. That's a suburb just kind of northwest of Atlanta. And it's a really convenient place, not only to the suburbs and to Atlanta, but also it starts to get into some of the rural areas in Northwest Georgia as well. So that is where we physically are, but also virtually at foundrycounseling.com. Okay,
great. Well, David, I'm sure we'll be in touch some more, and I'm going to be following you and checking out what you're doing. And again, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, folks, I'm so glad that David Sturgess joined me for the podcast today. He is just an amazing guy. He has just done so much to build and start a private practice pretty quickly. And I will say David has done it the right way, and that he really meticulously made that transition from working in a hospital setting to going into full-time private practice. And it's just been so great to watch David and his journey. And I was so glad and so thankful that he was in the Mastermind group, this last one that I had, and he contributed so much to that. And as you've heard from him, he learned a lot through that as well. And so, again, thanks to David for joining me today. Do check out his website, foundrycounseling.com, and also find him on Facebook. He's got a lot of great stuff, and he's one of those people you can watch it happen. So I'm just really proud of David and what he's done in starting a private practice and taking that leap. Do check out, if you're interested in maybe joining a mastermind group. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm getting ready to start one at the end of September, or in September, not exactly sure what the date is, but you can get to that at practiceoftherapy.com/mastermind, and fill out the application, and I'll be back in touch with you, and we'll figure out if it's a good fit for you. And then also, I want to mention again, today's sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the #1 electronic health record system for therapists. They're who I use in my practice, and I could not do my practice without them. Their client portal is hard to beat. In fact, this past week, I got 3 new referrals because of the client portal. They were able to go in there and see my availability and then request an appointment with me. So it's a good tool, not only for helping you manage your practice. It's HIPAA secure. It does it all. It does insurance claims. It does scheduling. It does all those fun things, billing, all of those things that you need in order to have a successful private practice. So go check them out, therapynotes.com. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get a month free. Again, folks, thanks for joining me for today's episode. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play or Spotify. Those are just a few. We're out there on a lot of podcatchers now. And if you like what you're hearing, be sure to share us with your friends, for those other colleagues that you think might be interested in the podcast. And I'm so grateful to you for joining me in this journey, and glad you're here with me. So take care, folks, and we'll be talking with you next week. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.